Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting of the Westerville City Schools Board of Education. The agenda will be displayed on the screens in the front of the room, and you may also follow along by connecting to the district's website at www.wcsoh.org. Click on our district link, then select Board of Education and then Board Docs Agenda, and select this evening's meeting. There will be two opportunities to address the board this evening, the first being Agenda Item 6.01. The first set of public comments is relative to Agenda Items 7.01 through 12.02. Please state the agenda items you are referencing at the beginning of your comments. The second opportunity is Agenda Item 13.01. There is a sign-up sheet located on the table in the back of the room, and each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board. And with that, Mr. Griffith, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Cotter?
Here.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Here.
Mrs. Davidson?
Here.
Mr. Villardo?
Here.
Mr. Byrd?
Here. And if everyone will please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes.
Once again, everyone, good evening. Very pleased to see everyone here during a summer session. And we will roll right into district highlights and recognitions for today, June 27, 2016. And I believe that Vice President Rick Villardo will be taking the lectern to make this presentation.
Thank you, President Byrd. I'm going to ask the Board of Education and the superintendent to stand up front here, and I will go to the lectern. These are always really exciting things for us to do, and my part here is very short. I would just like to invite Principal Kurt Yancey from North High School, Westerville North High School, to come forward to make the introductions.
Good evening, President Byrd, Superintendent Kellogg, members of the Board of Education. It is my pleasure tonight to be able to introduce you to an amazing Westerville North Warrior. Her name is Megan Harris, and the Warrior family is extremely proud of her recent accomplishment. Megan just received the Achievement in Writing Award from the National Council of Teachers of English. According to the council, this award was established in 1957 to recognize some of the best student writers in the nation. Over 500 juniors were nominated by their schools to participate in the 2016 competition. After being nominated, students completed an essay on a topic chosen by the council. They also had to submit a best writing sample. Their work was evaluated by national judges on content, purpose, audience, tone, word choice, organization, development, and style. Along with Megan, only 10 other students in Ohio received this distinct honor. We at Westerville North appreciate and are thankful for the recognition Megan and her family are receiving tonight from our Board of Education and Central Office Administration. And we look forward to Megan's future achievements and her continued focus on academic excellence. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Miss Megan Harris.
Time for Megan Harris. Congratulations, Megan, and again, Kurt, thank you for being here tonight to honor this family and this recognition.
You said, Megan, that the topic was responsibilities and passion, balancing. We should probably all read that sometime.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Might learn something.
Agreed. Excellent. We will move on to agenda item 4.01, the approval of the minutes for the Board of Education meeting held on Monday, June 13th, 2016. A reminder to our citizens here as well as watching live, we do not vote on the approval of the minutes, but we do ask for questions, concerns, issues about these minutes. Hearing none, we'll proceed with the agenda. Board minutes are approved. And we move to reports 5.01. We have none this evening. And we move to public comments 6.01. Public comments may be made prior to the action by the board on the business agenda. Public comment at this point is in the agenda will be restricted to items on the agenda only, and each person shall be allotted 5 minutes to make comments or remarks at this time. At the board's discretion, the amount of time allocated to this public comment section may be limited. And this evening, we do have a speaker, Peg Duffy.
If I'm following the online agenda, it would be 8.11. The agenda it's posted at the back says that I'm talking about 8.10. Specifically, this is the athletic director position at Westerville North. We need some clarification. The district online application that the candidate submitted on May 26th indicates that the position under administration is director. However, the previous day, in the letter that the candidate submitted to Mr. Yancey, I have learned of the assistant principal / athletic director opening at Westerville North High School, et cetera. We know that the position of athletic director does require that the individual have a principal's certificate. I would just like this clarified. Is this position strictly athletic director, or is it also a combination of an assistant principal?
So that was presented in the applicant's letter to us. Our job description is athletic director. So it fulfills the athletic director job description. There's no change. If there's any sense, Peg, that we've modified the job in some way and responsibilities, it is not. It parallels the exact same positions that are held by Andy I and Buck Weaver at the other two high schools. No change in those responsibilities. They're similar. Is that?
Peg,
Yeah.
you're within your 5 minutes. Do you want to ask any additional questions?
Thank you. Okay, in minimum of my time. It's just that I submitted a public records request for the application materials for both positions that are being approved tonight, and I wanted to make sure that the candidate was not confused about what the position is, because the opening paragraph of the letter sent to Mr. Yancey is exactly what I read to you.
I don't think there's any confusion. But keep in mind, please, that our athletic directors also have academic responsibilities as well, including teacher observations. So those jobs do overlap into what we would traditionally view as assistant principals / athletic directors. But in terms of the responsibilities, it's no different than we have at the other two high schools, exact same set of responsibilities.
Where would parents from Westerville North find this clarified? Noting I'm not a parent, grandparent of anybody at North, just for their own edification, where would they find this explained?
You could ask Mr. Yancey, you could ask us, not sure that,
They're not going to find it in writing in anything on the district website, in other words.
I think it's in the announcement as athletic director, correct? His letter to us says /, our announcement says athletic director.
Correct. His letter says / your announcement and your application says director.
So I would say that candidate's letter to us is what presents the confusion. But in terms of the interview, his review of the job description, his understanding of the job, and our communication out to everybody, it's clear that this is an athletic director position. That I wouldn't see any confusion other than he may have had. And it's not uncommon for districts to have it as a / in that manner. And the process by which people submit applications to us online, it's very possible that his cover letter covered other school districts he might have been looking at the same time and were modified to fit Westerville, and whether or not he kept it as AD, AP. So in terms of our communication out to the public, I think we were pretty clear, and in the interview process, shouldn't be any surprises.
I just wanted to make sure that parents understood other responsibilities that this individual might have.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you, Peg.
Excellent. Thank you, Peg. Appreciate it. Move into agenda item 7.01. It's a resolution to approve the financial reports and investments of May 2016 and to authorize the treasurer to perform fiscal year-end adjustments if needed. And the report lists all funds ending in as of May 31st, 2016. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Art?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The May report for the general fund only, year-to-date receipts are $166.2 million. The year-to-date expenditures are $141.6 million. We have an unencumbered general fund balance of $81,229,000. For all funds, year-to-date receipts are $218.4 million. Year-to-date expenditures are $194.7 million, and the unencumbered fund balance for all funds is $98.3 million. And this is May's report. We'll do June's next year when we give you a year in total.
Any questions about the financial report just presented? If not, could we please call the roll?
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Our next resolution under the financial section will be 7.02, a motion to approve a resolution for the final appropriations for school year 2015-2016 and fiscal year 2016. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Bart.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is the annual appropriations presentation that we do typically every June. There are two parts to this presentation. The first and the majority are for the final appropriations for June 30th, 2016, and then we'll go over 2017. But at the end of that, we'll have two separate resolutions, one for 16 and one for going forward in 17. Basis of this presentation is it's revenues, expenditures, encumbrances for all funds under the control of Westerville City Schools. That's always important to talk about, is the control. There are two appropriation presentations, which we just talked about. The second part is for 17. The reporting entity is Westerville City Schools. It is for Westerville City Schools only. The city and the county operations are not part of this report, nor is the Westerville Public Library. Sometimes there may be confusion is because they have to go through us to put a levy on the ballot, but we are not the controller of their funds, only if they want to put a levy on the ballot. We also are fiscal agent to some pass-through grants. For instance, like St. Paul, we would receive some money from the state on behalf of St. Paul's, and we would pay those. Those are funds, those are actually 401 funds, if you want to get technical. Here is the list of all the funds that we have. Now, keep in mind, this is one page. The financial report that I can read to you guys is about 21 pages that incorporates all of those, but those are the titles of all the pages, and they're broken out by the type. If general fund is by itself, you have special revenue funds, you have enterprise funds, expendable funds. Those are all the types of funds that this district, and any district, works with. As we go through here, if you guys have questions, again, I know Jerry's kind of new to this one. If you guys have questions, just stop me on the way and I'll make sure I answer them for you. The final appropriation presentation is typically by October 1st, we would do the appropriations for this year, but the final amended appropriations are for the full fiscal year, and they're appropriated at the fund level, which is the previous page I gave you was the funds. Those are the funds. That's what they're appropriated at, is the fund level. We don't appropriate it, function code, object codes, whatever. It's at the fund level, and that's what this is for. I did put in here for you, because it's not just you, but the people at home or whoever happened to look at this, and we'll make sure we put this on the website as well. These are when we talk about object codes, like 100 is personal services, I also tried to put up there is what line is reflected on the 5-year forecast as well. So if somebody wants to know where can I find this on the 5-year forecast, I tried to put those on there as well. 100s are personal services, payroll basically. 200s are benefits, insurance benefits, retirements. There are no 300 funds, so if you're looking for them, you won't find them. There are no 300 funds. 400 funds are purchase services, could be attorney's fees, could be anything that we use, gas, electric, water, sewer, anything that we're purchasing a service is 400. The other object codes are 500, which is supplies and materials. 600 are capital outlay. We don't use 700s either. We used to, but we do not anymore. And these are all governed by the state. These aren't my numbers. These are the state numbers. I've tried to make them for you guys to understand. Sometimes, and I try to maintain these presentations that are similar every year so that everybody kind of understands, I don't lose anybody. Fiscal year 2016 operating fund, this is by object code. You can see in 100, we spent $88,345,000 in salaries, $30,310,000 in benefits. Those are our two largest groups for a total $159 million. If you remember, we did bring this back to you last year, or last month as kind of an updated to get through June. That number has not changed. This graph also shows you percentages as well. And this is for general fund only, going forward for the most part. Here I tried to give you an object code from comparison from fiscal year 2011 through fiscal year 2016. One thing that's interesting to note, I'll see if I can point out for you guys back here. I can't see it over there, but I know that this first line, object, if you look at personal services, we were at $91.9 million in fiscal year 11. Fiscal year 16, we're still at $88.3 million. So we're not back up to where we were in 2011. Benefits are the next line down. We're about the same there. Those are mostly due to healthcare costs as well, retirement costs. Purchase services, you can see there's a little bit of a change. One thing you might look at would be say, well, why you're up in 800s? We changed in 2011 what we were paying for, where we were paying our services, our substitute services. We were paying them from the 400 purchase services, and when I came, we changed them to an 800 to other governmental institutions. So that's why the numbers change. But you can see visually where we are for each line as well. Excuse me. I tried to break this out by function. This is, keep in mind, this is different than the object. This is the function code, and I tried to look at what the state, how they separate it to give you a better idea. And so on the left side, you've got a lot more breakouts. On the right side, we've sort of combined issues so you can better understand. So for like regular instruction, of all of our costs, it's 45.3% of all of our cost. So the next line, special vocational instruction, would be 24 million at 15.1%. And as you see, as it goes down, we've tried to make sure you can understand what is the function we're spending. And that'll give you the costs for those as well. Excuse me. Another kind of breakout I gave you was the same thing from fiscal year 11, but I tried to give you some different codes on the left side to give you an idea. So these codes here on the left are a little different, and then to give you a graph so visually you could see where everything's at from 2011 through 2016. This is an expense by function. Again, if you like pie charts, it's a little bit different than the bar charts. It's just a pie chart. It gives you a little bit more visual of where the expenditures are. Again, regular instruction was $72 million, and everything else was broken out. Excuse me. These are the appropriations actually for 2016, and what I gave you in the one center column is what we did in May 23rd. What the appropriations, we came back and asked you to kind of modify them in the meantime. One's on the right, which is this column right here, kind of tells you what they are for the permanent as of 6/30/2016 that we will end this way. That's not a lot. I know food service in this particular case, you guys can't see that back there, and I apologize, you guys can't see it here, but the food service actually, from where they had what they thought they were going to spend, decreased it by $520,000. That's kind of a major one. But it's still, we ended the year and went in all funds at $211,994,440 is the appropriation final that we wanted the board to approve tonight for fiscal year 2016. This is the actual resolution that you'll produce, that we actually submit to Franklin County, County Auditor's Office. And you'll also, we have to sign a certificate that says we has funds as well. But that's it for 2016. Okay, any questions?
All folks.
Any questions? I gotta liven it up somehow, so.
Sometimes I do look at these in detail. I just want people to know that, and I really appreciate the way you present this and try to make it so that we can grasp not only the high-end view, but really some of the detail. And one of the details that caught my eye was what you just said a few seconds ago. And I'm just curious. How did food services save or underspent by?
They didn't underspend. They just modified their original appropriations from what they thought they were going to need to what they didn't.
That's $500,000.
It is.
That's a lot of catch-up.
$500,000 out of $5.4 million.
Right.
So, yeah. It's not that they didn't spend it, it's just that's what they had allocated. Could have been utility costs, could have been different kind
Okay.
of costs that they do.
That just catches my eye anytime that kind of appropriation goes in that direction.
Okay, so if there's no questions on this one, let me start with 17, so I can finish this. 17 is only a few pages. 17 is just the same language. We just changed the information so that fiscal year 17 begins July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. And again, you can follow on your screen. It's hard to see up on that screen. What we did for this case going forward, we actually tried to mirror what we had on the 5-year forecast for this well, so that if you look at the 5-year forecast, they kind of mirror each other for fiscal year 17. Now, keep in mind, the 5-year forecast is based on expenditures. This is based on appropriations. And why I say that, when you look at the general fund, I know it's hard to make out this line here. We're actually $2.4 million less in appropriations next year than we were this year. Well, if you remember, we added about $2.5 million for capital last year, which had to be appropriated and wasn't spent, but it had to be appropriated. Next year, you're going to see it being spent, but it was already appropriated this year. That's the distinction between the two. And so overall, next year's total appropriations for the entire budget really is $92,000 less than it was for this fiscal year. Any questions on that one? So there'll be two resolutions we'll call here in a minute. One is for the finals for 2016, and one is the finals to approve this as the budget for 2017. And I know this is June of 17 or June of 16. If things change, you can always come back and revisit this. So that's why we wanted to do it now and sort of be done with it for next year. Other than that, there's the same resolution. It's just going to be a different date and different time, and it's all the same thing. And then that was it.
Excellent. Bart, thank you very much. Questions relative to either motion? We have a motion on the floor for the first, which is to approve the resolution of the final appropriations for all funds for school year 2015-2016. Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes, and included in the presentation was information relative to the next resolution, which would be a resolution to approve the final appropriations for all funds, school year 2016-2017 for fiscal year 2017. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none. Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes. And our final resolution this evening, relative to the financial section of the agenda, would be resolution to approve the transfer of funds from General Fund 001 to the Uniform School Supplies Fund 009 in the amount of $23,440. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
And Bart?
Mr. President, members of the board, this is sort of an annual thing as well. The 009 is a uniform school account. So when students pay fees into the district, we put that money into 009. But as you know, for any child that is on free and reduced lunch, they do not pay fees. But so that we don't penalize all the buildings, we transfer money from the general fund to account for that so that they still have the money they need to do their expenditures. This is the final balance number that we needed to transfer. I think we did it back in October, November as well, original amount. This is just we'll sort of finalize that fund.
Any questions? Hearing none. Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes. Bart, thank you very much. We'll move to agenda item 8, personnel consent agenda for June 27th of 2016. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
A second. And Lori, I believe you'll be giving a report this evening?
Good evening, Mr. Byrd, members of the board. Tonight's agenda contains 10 sections involving over 300 persons. Section 8.01 is the resignation of one classified substitute. 8.02 is the resignation of 2 teachers. 8.03 is reduction of force of 2 teachers. 8.04 is a leave of absence for 3 teachers. 8.05 is a change of assignment for 1 classified employee. 8.06 is a change of assignment for 3 teachers. 8.07 is a contractual status change for 3 classified employees. 8.08 is a variety of one-time payments, including several additional names from previously approved items. 8.09 is 1 salary adjustment, employment of 4 classified employees and 5 substitutes. And 8.10 is employment of 2 administrators, one of whom is able to join us this evening. Mr. Mike Starner is here. He will be the principal at South High School. Mike? Wesley Alfreds, Mr. Alfreds was unable to join us this evening. We also have an 8.10 employment of 12 teachers, 8 supplemental contracts, and 5 outside supplemental contracts.
Before we go to questions, I would ask that, I believe it's 8.08 on this evening's agenda, one-time payments, that we call the roll on that separately, please.
Certainly will. Any questions, issues, or updates relative to the report for personnel?
I do want to welcome you, Mike. Welcome you and tell you, okay, you get ready, because we have high expectations. It's a remarkable building. All 3 of the high schools are incredible places to be. You chose well in deciding to come here, so welcome to you, welcome to the family. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do and to being part of what you do.
Thank you. I just want to thank the board and Dr. Cullen and everyone involved with the committee for inviting me in and leading me throughout the process, and especially these 2 guys, Mr. Spinner, Mr. Yancey, for already reaching out and supporting me here this evening, and of course, my wife and my 2 daughters.
I think we'll probably see a lot of them.
I also want to say welcome, and welcome to the Wildcat family and the Westerville City School District family. You joined the ranks of 2 spectacular principals whom we truly appreciate, Mr. Yancey and Mr. Spinner, that we're glad they're here tonight to support you, but good luck. It's going to be a challenge. We're excited to challenge you.
Yeah, I would just echo the comments. You are one of 3 very strong high school principals that we now have, and I'm just very excited to see you working not only at South, Nancy's alma mater. She will remind you at many points in this duration. No, just very excited, and I'm excited to see you work together with the 3 of you to make the high school experience here in Westerville even stronger, which I personally think is the strongest in the region, but to make it even stronger. So welcome aboard. Look forward to working with you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add my welcome, and we're glad to have you on board at the district as well as joining the Wildcat family, and it's great to see the other principals here tonight too. They do an excellent job and are going to be a good resource for you. Thanks.
And I will definitely echo all of the board members' feedback as well. I'm particularly excited that Mr. Spinner and Mr. Yancey are here this evening. It's reflective of a statement that I've made about this school district. Since joining the board, we have, 1 community but 3 hearts. We have a great high school system. Each board member has areas of special interest and special expertise. I have always been interested in the secondary grades, interested in the high school, format and structure in our facilities, as are many of the board members, but to look at what we do with our high schools compared to other districts where there's a tremendous amount of either unhealthy competition or unhealthy dynamics relative to tensions between one high school and another. I will tell you, I will always reflect back on South's 2 runs for state basketball titles, where there were as many, burgundy and gold and silver and black shirts in the audiences as there were red and black. It's just reflective of the way the community operates. I'm excited that you're here. I am very, very pleased that, that you're joining the ranks of what I believe are some of the best principals here in Central Ohio. So welcome, welcome to your family, and we're looking forward to great things in Westerville South. Excellent. All right. May I have a motion for the personnel consent agenda?
We have
Or I had a motion. May I have a roll call, please? Thank you.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Excellent.
And
Once again,
one-time payment.
oh, sorry. I do need to call a motion for a one-time payment.
So
That is
moved.
agenda item 8.07. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
8.08.
8.08.
Second.
There we go. And Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Abstain.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move to policy consent. 9.01 is a final reading for policy 5200 related to attendance. This change in law only applies to the calculation of full-time equivalency for individual students. Before I call a motion, reminder to our citizens here and viewing that these were all presented as first readings. We will provide a summary statement as to what these motions are, and we will proceed directly to a vote. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions relative to the final reading of policy 5200 relative to attendance? Hearing none. Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes, our next final reading is 9.02 agenda item, policy 5320, immunization. The law has changed to now require students to be immunized against meningococcal disease at an age recommended by the Ohio Department of Health. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Agenda item 9.03 is a final reading of policy 6110 related to grant funds. This policy is to provide reasonable assurance that transactions are properly recorded and accounted for in order to permit the preparation of reliable financial statements and federal reports. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter.
Questions? Excellent. Hearing none, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Our next agenda item, 9.04, is a final reading of policy 6114, cost principles, spending of federal funds. This policy is to establish and maintain effective internal controls over federal awards. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes, we move to agenda item 9.05, a final reading of policy 6116, time and effort reporting. Section 200.430 of the Code of Federal Regulations requires certification of effort to document salary expenses charged directly or indirectly against all federally sponsored projects. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Agenda item 9.06 is a final reading of policy 6325, procurement, federal grants and funds. Procurement of all supplies, materials, equipment, and services paid for from federal funds or district matching funds shall be in accordance with all applicable federal, state, and local statutes and/or regulations. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none. Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Agenda item 9.07 is a final reading of policy 6423, the use of credit cards. This policy will establish and maintain effective internal controls over the use of credit cards. May I have a motion, please?
So moved?
Second.
Any questions?
No.
Excellent. Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Dr. Nestor Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Cotter.
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Velardo.
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes, and our final reading, 9.08, is the reading of policy 6550, travel payment and reimbursement. This policy will establish and maintain effective internal controls over expenses incurred for official business travel on behalf of the Board of Education. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Cotter.
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson.
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Velardo.
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Love it. It's like just punching them out like, there we go. Excellent job. Thank you to all of the administrative staff. We are just on pace for closing a tremendous number of policy review gaps. We're well into the 70s or 80s of policies that we have updated. So I did not want to leave this section without acknowledging the hard work it takes to make sure that we get all of these updated in a timely manner. That being said, agenda item 10.01, recommended action for old business. We will have a final reading of the 2017-2018 academic calendar. You have this, John?
Yeah, thank you, President Byrd. Mr. Vibrant asked me to step in for him tonight. He has a family engagement, so you'll have to suffer through me trying to make sense of what his notes here. So the call for feedback on the proposed 17-18 academic calendar, which you see up there, I thought would be up there. We had 136 respondents to the opportunity to provide feedback. 126 of those identified themselves as community members with children in the system. 6 or staff members with at least one child enrolled in the school district, and 4 respondents identified themselves as staff members without children. Of the respondents, 80 of the 136 indicated explicit support for the calendar. Comments such as, "I'm in favor of the proposed calendar, love the schedule, this looks great, thank you." None of the remaining 56 explicitly opposed the calendar. The vast majority of their comments fell into 3 categories. Some would like to see winter break return to a full 2 weeks. Some would like to see spring break float to coincide with the holiday weekend. And some expressed a desire to see the school year start even later. In the case of one respondent, they proposed transitioning to a year-round schedule, which made all the teenagers happy.
Velardo.
Of the 126 respondents who identified themselves as a parent of a student in the school system, 74 indicated support for the calendar and 52 offered comments only. Of the 10 respondents identified themselves as a district employee, 6 indicated support for the calendar and 4 offered comments for future consideration. Employee comments mirrored those of families that responded. Some respondents were under a misperception that starting later in August, as well as including professional development days and early releases, means students will receive less instructional time, and that's not the case. This calendar provides the same instructional time as previous calendars. The difference would be in the last couple of calendars, we've accepted the academic calendar and come back later and had to modify to include the professional development days and early release dates. And now that we're up out front and we've got the right people in the room, we're planning that forward so parents, we don't make that change late. So based on these results, it's recommended the board approve the calendar as approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I really wish I had a whole bunch of nasty, hard, ugly questions, but it's a calendar and I don't, just because you are the one that has to handle it and Greg isn't here. But I just don't.
Excellent. Do we have to take any action on this? It was previously
we do.
voted on the calendar. Okay. Okay, so we need a motion to accept the final version of the 2017-2018 academic calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, you can have it, Jerry, it's fine.
Any questions, concerns, issues? Hearing none, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Velardo.
Yes.
Ms. Cotter.
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker.
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you, John. Recommended action for new business, we have 3 first readings this evening. The first will be 11.01, which is a first reading of Policy 2114, Meeting State Performance Indicators. And will we have a report on this?
I'll be happy to fill in. The history to this particular policy dates back to a policy the board had adopted as probably a Neola recommendation back, looks like in December of 2009. These are recommended changes from Neola that really do 2 things. One is they're trying to align the language in the policy to the current report card standards. In other words, we no longer have the excellent designation, we have the letter grades. The second one is that whereas the previous policies merely spoke to district performance, this one is explicit to district performance and building level performance. And essentially requires that we maintain an expectation that we get A's on the state report card and that the superintendent have a plan for moving us forward if we're not getting A's on the report card, and that we allocate resources to those areas of need, all of which is fundamentally how we operate. My own personal piece on this is I'm not sure how tied the board may want to be in our community to these particular state standards and letter grade system that exists there. I'm all for high standards. I'm not sure these might be whether or not we think these are the right standards for us to go towards.
Well, I've been sitting over here all evening saying yes, and I agree, and I'll move, and I'll second, but I'll tell you right now, I do not agree with this policy. I do not like this policy. I think that it flies in the face of a whole lot of things that this board has sat up here and taken issue with. It's not that I don't think we should be holding high standards for the district or for all of the buildings, but I have a whole lot of concerns about, well, a number of things, but for instance, tying what we do within our district only to state performance indicators, when we know that those change oftentimes based on politics rather than on the quality of the work that's going on in a district or building. We know that they change as regards what the cut score may be at any point in time. We know that we have significant concerns about some of the methodologies that go into the report card ratings. I don't want to hold out as policy that I voted for something that says, I don't like all that stuff, but I want everybody to get an A on the report card. I think that those are the wrong quality measures for us to look at. When I look at quality in this district, I want to look at quality over time, not quality based on what is happening in a particular environment in education in the state of Ohio in any particular biennium. I want to look differently. I want to look at different requirements. I want to look at different indicators. I want us to think a lot more substantially about what we hold up as what we want as quality in the school district. That's where I am. I'm also very concerned about saying that we will allocate resources. While yes, of course, that is our intent, this policy was violated back in the most recent round of devastating cuts that occurred in this district. So a policy that was voted on by the board in '09 was then violated as soon as the finances went sideways. I don't want to set us up in policy in such a short-term approach to finance, a short-term approach to quality, a short-term approach to indicators, all of those pieces. And so I did all that without saying I don't think Neola did a very good job on this. But I don't think Neola did a very good job on this, and I think that what I would really like to see happen is for you and your staff to go back and rework this before it comes back, at least for me, to consider voting yes on it.
Does it feel like, because I'm following you, and I'm reading this, and I'm following you, does it feel like that this almost am I understanding you correctly, that you feel like this policy almost ties our hands to the policy, which we want to be A or excellent or whatever verbiage they change it to next? We know we want to be that, but you feel like this policy is too centric on whatever comes out of others
Yes.
and not focused enough on, well, let us put our benchmarking in this as well. Can we do that? Can we put,
Yes.
can we not only benchmark in the way that others are saying, well, you got to do this and you got to do this, like a teacher says to a class, I get that. But can we also put in this policy, I think you're suggesting, can we make it, I'll just use the words, can we make it really Westerville City School District centric, while also honoring the verbiage that others are placing on us? Is that a sense? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, you do have it right in a much less militant sounding way.
I look. Well, we knew you didn't like Neola.
You know I don't like Neola,
That's
you know
just-
I don't like the methodologies, you know, all those pieces, but you're absolutely right. This needs to be about Westerville.
Okay, I like that a lot, and I wanted to make sure that's where I thought that's
where we're
what you were
going.
focused.
That's
Okay.
where my thinking
Okay.
is anyway.
There's several school districts throughout Ohio, and it kind of started in the Cincinnati area, where groups of school districts got together and started working on measures that they call a quality profile. Currently, locally, Upper Arlington uses a report card of that style. New Albany does as well. There are other school districts. I have a couple on my desk that I've been looking at in terms of the relationship to strategic planning and some of the balanced scorecard work we're doing internally, because it starts to tie the whole piece together around evaluation that we've talked about, performance-based compensation and CCIPs. So measures and those report cards might be, for example, performance and participation in ACT, performance and participation on advanced placement or IB, some of the local measures. What might be some measures of social emotional well-being and learning for students, whether that's participation in clubs and organizations and sports, whether that's student surveys. So a couple of those districts have put together what they call a quality profile that they use as a means of communicating to the community along a larger spectrum of things that seem to resonate more. And I think the strategic planning, some of the components of a balanced scorecard speak to what our community wants to hear, including financial resources and how those are used to support, as we saw the allocations this evening and we know the history of the district, those are some components. So there are other ways of doing this that don't exclude using measures from the state accountability system, but allow us to broaden the lens by which we say, this is what quality education means to us in the school district.
And that's what you're, right? That's
Yes,
what
it's
we're
very
trying
much
to-
what I want to do.
Okay.
And, Neola did not do a bad job with this policy, but Neola didn't do this policy based on what our community has said it believes in as regards its students and what it's believing as regards performance indicators. So we have no option as regards whether we will be measured by the state. And that's okay. The state has to do what the state has to do. But we do have options as regards what additional benchmarks we want to look at and how we view the education of Westerville students. And I want us to always have that at the fore. If we do that well, the state indicators most likely will follow.
I guess my feedback is even a little bit more pointed, not militant, but I mean, like, I think I've made my position on both the irresponsibility of the State Board of Education and the legislature very, very clear. The last decade has proven one simple fact. I do not believe the State Board of Education has credibility as it relates to determining what are acceptable performance indicators and criteria at the local level. I think that they have failed horribly as has the legislature. In particular, I bring this topic up all the time. You know, my youngest daughter is going to have 4 different graduation standards in 4 different years of high school. I don't think that that qualifies the State Board of Education to tell me what are the right performance indicators for my local community. I think that my local community has the voice in that. I think that this can be a de minimis expectation, you know, relative to where the State Board is at, but our performance indicators should be reflective of what our community desires for our students and our families, as well as our community at large. And I think that that's the way that we need to turn the focus. I find it difficult to take guidance from a State Board of Education that is not managing a single part of the physical plant, not managing teachers, not managing taxpayer dollars relative to functions of local school districts. And yet they put something into a policy, and this will be the last point that I make about this, that doesn't belong in a policy. From a corporate standpoint, you don't determine or dictate performance through policy. You dictate performance through standards, right? And those standards then are able to be managed. They're able to be tuned. When you lock them into policy, you are putting yourself into a no-win situation where you run into exactly the unintended consequences that happened with our prior boards here in this district when they set a bar that was determined by the state, and then we had to manage locally to a number of changed circumstances, and guess what? The policy was inflexible relative to those changes in circumstances. So I don't believe that the State Board of Education has a dog in this particular hunt, and I'm not supportive of this as it's currently written, so. Any additional questions?
I concur.
I also agree.
Excellent.
I have one nuts and bolts question. Policy 2114, meeting state performance indicators. I am not sure if that is a required policy. I didn't think so. So what I would ask, as you go back and think about how to rework something like this, is to consider what the effective title for a policy like this is and where it should effectively reside in the policy book.
Excellent. Hearing no additional questions, we'll move to the next first reading for this evening, which will be Agenda Item 11.02, which is a reading for Policy 2430, district-sponsored clubs and activities. And I see Mr. Reeves making his way to the lectern.
Good evening, President Byrd, members of the board. This is a revision to Policy 2430 that is very, very minor. If you recall, a couple of board meetings back, the board approved the addition of Policy 2430.02, which was a legislative requirement to allow students in community schools and STEM schools to participate in extracurricular activities within our district. The amendment to this policy simply adds a reference to the new policy that reads, students attending community or STEM schools may participate in extracurricular activities in accordance with Policy 2430.02. Very short and sweet, and just makes a reference to our new policy.
Excellent. Questions or feedback? Hearing none, thank you for that report. I appreciate it. We'll move to 11.03, which is a first reading of Policy 9270, equivalent education outside the schools or homeschooling.
Thank you. This policy, as required by Ohio Revised Code, will add language to our existing policy which requires the superintendent to sign a properly earned and issued diploma from the parent or guardian of a student who successfully completed all graduation requirements through home education. So a student who's completed everything that the state and board has required in order to graduate and produces to the superintendent a diploma that they issued, the superintendent is now required by law to sign it once verifying that the student has met all requirements to graduate.
Excellent. Questions or feedback? Hearing none, thank you very much for the reports, Scott, appreciate it. And we'll move to Agenda Item 12, which is a recommended action for standing business, June 27th of 2016, which would include 12.01, which would be donations. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
And any questions, concerns, thanks, appreciation relative to our donations this evening?
I would say we are always, always thankful for any donation. I want to highlight in here a group that constantly gives to our district, Westerville Partners for Education, once again, donating to our district. We truly appreciate them.
I would agree. I'd like to personally call out, love always seeing our PTAs, PTSAs, and the activities that they do at the local school levels, the creativity that they bring to the table, and not just monetary donations, but acquiring material donations as well as donations of service in kind. They do a great job. So, excellent. Any additional questions or feedback? If not, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes. We'll move to agenda item 12.02, which will be a resolution to approve Calamity Day alternative makeup plans, and this is a motion to approve the resolution. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. Who will be doing the report? Got it.
I can take it, Jen, that's okay. Did you want me to take this one? Did you have it? Why don't you go ahead and take, you know this one better than I do. Did I change that up on you? Okay.
I can roll with it. I'm flexible. Good evening, and thank you. With the passage of House Bill 153, districts have the opportunity to maintain their school calendars by making up calamity hours. As you'll recall, when we had our last agreement with WEA, we moved 2 hours in the 15-16 school year. So when I came to you last time, it was more in November, because this took us a considerable amount of time in collaboration with Mr. Hershiser and Mr. Vibrantz, looking at our calendars to make sure we were good to go. So this resolution is to adopt the Calamity Day Alternative Makeup Plan, which includes the use of up to 3 days in which online lessons will be utilized. Teachers will be required to have those in place per the resolution by November 1st. And the Ohio Department of Education does require us to do this on a yearly basis. So we meet with WA leadership and make sure that it's still moving as they would wish to see it. Now, last year, we did spend a lot of time figuring this out, and as you know, we did not have to put those in place, so that is also our plan moving forward, that the weather will cooperate with us and we won't access these, but we do have them in place, and it really, several years ago, helped us move into that online environment and kind of dipped our toe in the water. So it's gotten very good feedback when we have had the opportunity to use them.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any questions or feedback? I don't believe so. I know that we went through this thoroughly, like you mentioned before, so much appreciated. Hearing no additional questions, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll move to agenda item 13.01, which is public comment this evening, and this evening we have no one who has registered for public comment, so we can move directly to agenda item 14.01, board comments. Who would like to start?
I'd say a quick word. Two things came to my mind. One, relative to Mike Starner coming into principalship at Westerville South. And we thanked Mr. Yancey and Mr. Spinner for being here, and we should do that. They are going to form a really strong triumvirate. You like that word, Nancy?
I like that
You
word. It's a good word.
It's a good English major word. But you know what? I think we forgot to thank one person, and I don't throw out compliments just for fun. But I would like to include in that group Mr. Scott Reeves.
Yes.
In that cadre of people who secondary education and that leadership and so on. And I don't just throw this compliment out, but I thought afterwards that is one that I neglected. So thank you for your part, not only in that process, but what you will do leading this forward. And just a just obviously a very painful, heartfelt from myself, and I believe from the board for Lauren Seitz's family. This young lady lost her life. Mrs. Davidson and I were just commenting before the board meeting began. Here is a young lady that we shook hands, hugged, thanked, and just sent her out into the world and just do wonderful stuff. And that's a very painful situation for her family, and I would say for that school family. That's just the community of kids there. So, on behalf of the board, if it's okay from you all, I just please know that to those teachers who had Lauren, to the friends that will show up in the fall and she will not be in their class in the seat, and certainly to her family, if they hear any of this, you are just very much in our thoughts and prayers, and thank you for sharing her life with us. And please know that we share, in a very small way, the pain of your loss.
Thank you, Rick. Any other board comments this evening?
Thank you, Rick, for what you said. I'm so glad that you thanked Scott. It's all too easy to be taken for granted when you're in central office. And Scott, Barb, all of our central office staff are amazing individuals. And John, I give you a lot of credit for keeping them, for maintaining the strength of the team that we have here. And a team is only as good as its relationships with the rest of the organization. And I applaud all of the work that you all do within the district, with leadership, with teachers, with teacher leaders, with families and students, and with the community at large. We're very gifted here, very much blessed with the people who've chosen to be part of this community, this particular educational family. And thank you for what the comments that you made. I certainly concur with what you said, and thank you for saying that on behalf of the board. It was a gaspingly, shockingly painful thing. So thank you very much.
So I'll just close out this evening. Very thankful that we have citizens that are continuing to participate through our summer sessions. The work of the district never stops. In fact, I always like to remind folks that this is an extremely busy time of the year as we cram 1 year worth of construction into about 9 weeks and 2 days. And there are a lot of activities going on around the district. I'm very excited about all of our projects, but again, thankful for citizens staying in contact and participating in this public forum, so we appreciate it. With no additional comments, I will move to agenda item 15.01, dates, times, and locations of our next meetings. The board will meet on Thursday, July 7th, 2016 at 6 p.m. in the board training room at the Early Learning Center, and the July 25th, 2016 board meeting is yet to be determined. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. We are adjourned.